Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Matzak talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I'm going to actually talk to you about using heuristics and biases in decision making to actually improve your writing. So I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and we understand sort of heuristics and decision making. I'm going to get into what exactly that is and give you sort of 3 kind of sort of biases that we typically have, or heuristics that we typically have with our decision making, and how it could actually improve our writing. So this is part of my Monday Write series, where I just try to be as helpful as I possibly can to anybody that is interested in writing, so it's not just academic writers like myself. So so first of all, what is a bias or what is a heuristic in decision making? Well, this is a mental shortcut that we make in order to actually make decisions much more quicker and a little bit more effective than what we would do sort of without them. Because we actually, when we make decisions, so decision making is this process where we're coming up with a particular choice and that is going to benefit us in some sort of way, or what we think is going to benefit us in some sort of way. We often have these sort of mental shortcuts because it just takes so much energy. We wouldn't be able to process all the information around us. So we use heuristics that allow us to sort of make a decision much more quicker. So often we think that these heuristics, so a lot of scientists, a lot of psychologists have sort of suggested that it biases us in some sort of way and makes sort of not very good decisions sometimes. But you can actually use some of these decision sort of problems, quote unquote problems, heuristics that we have to make us sort of be a little bit more effective with some of the things that we do. As long as we have knowledge of these particular decision-making heuristics, then we can actually sort of go forward. The first one is sort of is functional fixedness, and this is stuff that we've been talking about. Actually, some German scientists have been, they started looking at this in the 1940s, and this is where, I believe they were German. I believe that so this is where we're looking at problem solving, and people have a hard time sort of looking at a problem and the solution to that problem outside of the particular domain of that problem. So once you transfer it to another area, transfer almost the exact same analogy into a different area, and you put it into a different sort of space, that we can't really solve that problem in the same sort of way. We do a really poor job of solving that particular problem in a similar way when we move that to a particular space. So which means we kind of get stuck in that particular area. And anybody that has solved any sort of math problems will sort of quickly understand that it's really hard to transfer sort of that particular math problem or solution from one problem to the next, unless it's really, really narrowly defined, and then we just get kind of stuck that way. So what I was thinking about with this particular sort of issue that we have is, why not use that for our own good when we're doing some sort of writing? So instead of saying, we're going to constantly sort of switch domains and switch sort of, put on many different hats, maybe what you can do is create themes when you're doing any particular writing. So maybe it is you're doing some sort of creative writing, you're creating a novel or something like that, or maybe you're writing academic papers. Well, you create a series of academic papers about a particular topic, because it's hard for us to switch to something else and transfer to something else. So if you created sort of a theme of multiple papers or multiple novels, you're going to sort of speed up the process, because we can't sort of switch to the next. And once you get bored of those particular ideas, switch to the next one, right? You switch to the next one. It's going to allow you to sort of think in a little bit more of an effective way. The second thing is, and this is kind of like counterintuitive with this one, it's sort of the opposite, is that we tend to use one particular mental model or some sort of schema of how we see the world. So mental model is the knowledge sort of map of how we see the world around us, right? So this is all of our experiences get encoded in the knowledge that we have, and it creates a sort of mental picture of how we see the world around us, and everybody's mental model of how they see the world around us is different. or their schema is different, and how they actually are processing the information that is coming towards them. So given that we can, that we have sort of one mental model, we might be able to trick this sort of frame that we have by simply moving ourselves into and creating a different persona, a particular another person, right? Or instead of thinking of yourself as an academic writer, for example, you think of yourself as a novelist, and you're creating novels for the academic audience. Or if you are a novelist and you're sort of doing like creative writing and things like that, well, why not take yourself and convert yourself into like a scientist and sort of try to view the same story from a scientific perspective, in the sense that you're trying to do investigation, you're trying to actually dig a little bit deeper into what's actually going on with the characteristics or the characters, and you start digging deeper, you're going to probably get a much different view of the same story and the same sort of issues if you do this kind of thing. You might actually come up with a much more interesting story that's actually that's more robust in a lot of different ways by simply doing that. And the same with switching your view, your idea of sort of thinking of yourself as a novelist, as a creative writer rather than a scientist. You might actually write a little bit better and create more interesting sort of compelling stories in your articles, right? So that's something to think about. And then, so the third thing that we do know, and this is sort of related to this issue of, we have heuristics that we're making. Well, why not use these heuristics? And the general idea that we use cognitive shortcuts, why not just, why not actually use this with writing by just writing, instead of being very calculative in the way that we're writing and sort of forcing the way that we're writing, just sit down and just write stuff, right? Just go and write as much as you possibly can and just go blah onto the sheet, and you'll actually find that you actually do pretty good stuff if you do that. It's not going to be perfect, but I do know from sort of research and what we know about brainstorming, if you could just get this stuff out and put all that stuff out, you're like 80% there. If you start screening and filtering things out before you actually sort of get that stuff out, then you're going to run into different issues and problems. You're going to screen yourself, and you're not going to be nearly as productive, and your ideas are not nearly going to be as good and interesting as if you just went and wrote as much stuff as you possibly can down without doing any sort of filtering. If you can do that, it's really hard to do, but if you can do that, that's great, right? So let your stories and let your ideas wander as much as possible. And then after, like way after, you can just go through and cut the stuff that doesn't make sense. If you do this, it actually speeds up your writing. It's much more enjoyable, and it's quite fun if you do that. Rather than screening as you're going through, I've switched in the last few years to do that. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more interesting sort of way of writing than the way that I was doing it, where I was screening and trying to analyze as much as possible and trying to make sure every single line was working. Nuts to that, right? Just try it, and you'll see that it is a lot more fun to sit down and just write things out. So my point is that you can use these sort of heuristics and decision making to actually, and sort of typically the way that we normally think, that decisions actually result in some sort of biases and stuff, but we can use these heuristics to actually improve our writing or improve the world around us if we were just simply aware of them. We could take advantage of this stuff and actually be much more effective than what we could without these heuristics, right? So that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Have fun, happy writing, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye.